In tonight's headlines, China's premier will no longer meet the press after the annual parliamentary sessions, breaking a decades-long tradition. One driver is killed and another seriously injured after a minor traffic accident turns deadly in Sha Tin. And Tokyo's Nikkei Index soars past 40,000 points for the first time, as tech shares lead the rally.
On the eve of the annual National People's Congress meeting, a bombshell was dropped by its spokesman.
不举行总理记者会。
Lo Qingjian announced that the premier will no longer hold a press conference at the conclusion of the week-long parliamentary sessions. Barring exceptional circumstances, Lo added the practice applies to the remainder of the 14th term NPC, which lasts until 2027. This marks the first time in more than 3 decades that the highly anticipated event was scrapped, with Premier Li Qiang's maiden session last year likely the final edition. While the questions are screened in advance, the press conference attended by journalists globally still offered the world a chance to hear directly from China's number 2 official. Lo pointed out that other State Council members will meet the press instead, including Foreign Minister Wang Yi. The spokesman also gave a hint of what to expect over the coming week.
推动高质量发展，提供
He said the leadership has set their focus this year on reform and legislation in a bid to promote high-quality economic development. Financial institutions will be among the sectors in line for reform, as they are tasked with better supporting private businesses. The underlying trend of an economic rebound and long-term growth remains unchanged, Lo declared. Rhetoric aside, Beijing's confidence will be more accurately reflected when Premier Li announces the annual growth target in his work report tomorrow. The world's second-largest economy grew 5.2% last year, exceeding its target. But the real estate crisis and geopolitical tensions with the United States continue to weigh down the economy. Janice Lo, Cable News. For the first time since the Hong Kong government announced plans to enact Article 23 of the Basic Law, Beijing has publicly endorsed a law prohibiting acts of treason, secession, and sedition.
Works in tandem with the national security law and other laws in Hong Kong. Together, they form a well-established legal system for safeguarding national security, which is conducive to safeguarding national sovereignty, security, and development interests.
Lo pointed out that Article 23 will ensure well-being of SAR residents and protect the interests of foreign investors by maintaining prosperity as well as stability in the region. Meanwhile, some Hong Kong delegates to the National Parliament are ready to voice their demands to the Beijing leaders. Lawmaker Rock Chan wants the central government to expand mutual capital market access between Hong Kong and the mainland by including the trading of initial public offerings. Currently, mainland residents can invest in Hong Kong stocks and bonds and vice versa.
就希望咧可以喺內地執業嘅時候咧，可以執業嗰個範圍咧就再擴大一啲。
Lawyer Wilson Shum said he has recommended Beijing to allow Hong Kong lawyers to practice in more areas across the Greater Bay Area instead of being limited to 9 cities currently. Janice Lo, Cable News.
One driver was killed and another injured after they were hit by a truck in Sha Tin this morning. A rear-facing dash cam installed on the taxi captured the whole incident, which took place at around 10:30 a.m. on Tate's Kern Highway. The southbound taxi first collided with a private car as it switched lanes near Pictorial Garden. After the vehicles came to a stop in the middle of the road, the drivers got out to inspect the damage and exchange words. Less than a minute later, the men realized a truck was charging towards them at high speed. They tried to take evasive action, but it was too late. We decided the footage was too graphic to be shown on television. The 68-year-old private car driver was declared dead at Prince of Wales Hospital, while the 53-year-old cabbie is receiving treatment at the intensive care unit. The 58-year-old truck driver was arrested for dangerous driving causing death. According to the Road Users Code published by the Transport Department, drivers and passengers are advised against leaving the vehicle following an accident, unless there is a safe place to wait for help. If they exit the car, they must not stay on the road or stand in front or behind the vehicle. Janice Yu, Cable News. Socialite Celia Wong has escaped jail time after she was sentenced to 160 hours of community service for lying to health authorities during an investigation of a COVID outbreak in 2022. The 38-year-old was earlier convicted of 4 counts of knowingly giving false information to a health officer. She had attended a birthday party of former National People's Congress delegate Whitman Hong. More than 200 people showed up at a time when Hong Kong was experiencing a COVID outbreak. Wong later tested positive for COVID, leading guests to be quarantined, including top government officials and lawmakers. Kowloon City Magistrate Ophelia Yap rejected Wong's claim that she broke the law by mistake. But she accepted the probation officer's suggestion of community service after considering Wong's clean record and contribution to society.
Melbourne hosted ASEAN leaders as Australia marks 50 years since it became the first official partner of the Southeast Asian bloc. Over the next 3 days, the ASEAN-Australia Summit is expected to focus on economic development and challenges facing the region and the greater Indo-Pacific. Territorial disputes in the South China Sea and the conflict in Gaza are likely to top the agenda.
We know that a major conflict in our region would be devastating to our communities and economies, as the terrible conflicts in Gaza and Ukraine have shown. So we all have a responsibility to shape the region we want to share, peaceful, stable and prosperous, where no country dominates and no country is dominated. It requires us all to nurture and protect agreed rules, to uphold international law, to prevent conflict and to build strategic trust.
However, some ASEAN members are cautious to avoid being dragged into the Sino-US conflict.
We do not want to be dictated by any force. So whilst we remain to be an important friend to the United States or Europe and here in Australia, they should not preclude us from being friendly to one of our important neighbors, precisely China. And if they have problems with China, they should not impose it upon us. We do not have a problem with China.
Outside the venue, protesters called on leaders to push for the return of democratic rule in Myanmar. Myanmar was admitted in 1997 as the bloc's 10th member, but its military rulers are barred from high-profile events after they seized power in a coup in 2021. Sachin Katwi, Cable News.
The Singaporean government has defended its use of public money after it was revealed that a grant was provided to lure Taylor Swift to the city-state. It's also believed an exclusive deal was struck with the concert promoter, which prevented the US pop sensation from going on tour elsewhere in Southeast Asia. The Singapore Tourism Board, or STB, confirmed the grant but would not go into details. Speaking in Parliament, the Culture Minister refused to disclose the amount of money involved after reports suggested his government paid up to $3 million per show.
There has been some online speculation as to the size of the grant. I can say that it is not accurate and not anywhere as high as speculated, but due to business confidentiality reasons, we cannot reveal the specific size of the grant or the conditions of the grant. STB assesses whether to give grants on a case-by-case basis, judiciously weighing up the benefits which might accrue to Singapore if the event were brought in.
Tong insisted that the direct economic benefits are significant and outweigh the grant. Economists estimate that Singapore will see an extra $371 million in tourism receipts as visitors splash on accommodation, dining and flights. Ray Min-Yuen, Cable News.
The Nikkei 225 climbed above 40,000 points for the first time, finishing at a record high of 40,109, up 0.5%. Tech stocks led the rally as the benchmark index has gained nearly 3% since last week. But analysts warned that investors may cash out after many Japanese firms announced share buybacks. Stocks in Hong Kong ended flat as investors waited for policy announcements from Beijing's annual legislative sessions. Turnover stood at $106 billion.